This is All the WrestleManias. Listener discretion is advised.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of All the WrestleManias. I'm Tim Hackman.
And I'm Rich Sigwald.
And we are your co-hosts. We hope you enjoyed our recent episode on Starrcade 85. We've got another exciting one coming up on Capital Punishment from 2011. The show that we put out is much better than that particular pay-per-view, so I hope you enjoy listening to that one. We're super excited for today's episode. We've got our first ever guest appearance on All the WrestleManias. Woo! First one. So today we are very excited. We want to welcome Dr. Jessica Krenek. Dr. Jess holds her PhD in Theater, Dance, and Performance Studies from the University of Maryland. She researches, writes, and presents extensively about non-male fans and wrestling fan culture. Her 2017 dissertation is entitled Sexuality, Gender, and the Performance of Wrestling Fan Culture. She's presented at the Popular Culture Association Conference, the Mid-Atlantic Theater Conference, and numerous other academic conferences, comic and wrestling cons, and much more. So it's a real pleasure to welcome Dr. Jess to the show.
Hey, thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, our pleasure. We're thrilled. We feel like we hit the big time now. We've got
I know. Someone agreed to come talk to us.
Yeah, and
we feel important.
It's very, again, the best part of getting a PhD is every note you write is a doctor's note. So you officially have doctors. You can have anything you're like, we know a doctor's note for our show. Say, your show is officially doctor approved. So
all right.
Sweet.
Put it on the website, Rich.
On it.
Can you re-up my Zoloft? I'm running low.
You know what? I bet I can. I have confidence. I have, performance background. I can do it.
All right. Good deal. So just a softball to start. Are you watching any exciting wrestling lately? Anything you're jazzed about?
Yeah. Like a lot of people, I think I'm excited for All Out coming up for AEW.
Yes.
I'm also, because I'm a person on the internet, I'm spoiled, but I am behind on the G1 Climax from this year. It did not end the way that I would have liked to see it end, but I do think that the right person won in that particular matchup, if that's how it had to be. And yeah, I also am looking forward to one of my locals, Flying V Fights. They are doing one of their first shows back in a while in October. So I'm very much looking forward to. They are doing a 2-night show. It's going to be the first night is a black tie gala, and the next night is a wrestling show. So
wow, holy
very
crap,
ready
that sounds
for that.
amazing.
Yeah. They're a theater company, and a number of their actors are also wrestlers and wrestling fans. So they started a theater wing of the division. So I'm very excited. Yeah, they are fabulous.
Where's that show going to be?
At the Black Box in downtown Silver Spring.
Oh, nice.
Yes. So the last time I went to the Renaissance Festival, there was actually a retelling of like Shakespearean plays through professional wrestling, and it was like the most spectacular thing I'd ever seen.
Two of the guys from that are involved with Flying V. They wrestle there as the Grimy Scots, but they are two of the guys from Renaissance Rumble are part of Flying V, and they're always amazing.
Very cool.
The Grimy Scott. So Drew McIntyre would be like the squeaky,
right? He is the cleanest Scott.
Yeah. I don't think they actually make Scots that clean usually.
But if there is one, it would have to be him, like just logically.
Are you watching much of the WWE product these days?
Not very much these days. I am very intrigued to see the sort of what's next with Triple H taking over. I was a big fan of NXT when it was, the Sami Zayn, Adrian Neville. We've just poached the indies. So if we can get some of that energy back, that would be amazing. I've heard there have been some good matches, some cool decisions, and they're bringing back some folks that I really like. So fingers crossed.
Yeah, I hope there's more than one match an hour. That's
Yeah,
really
that'd
that's
be
really what I
ideal.
want in it. Like I want that 1990s Monday Night Raw.
Yes.
I want that back.
Yes, I have watching this, like watching the Rumble, not to spoil it everybody, but I suddenly got the vivid flashbacks of watching the Raw where the 1-2-3 Kid showed up, and I was like, "Oh my god, I remember that. I watched that live. Can we have that back? I would love that. Also, can Raw
Yeah.
only be an hour? That would be fine. Not 3. I don't
Yeah,
need
I
3."
actually referenced that moment in the tribute to Scott Hall because
Oh, that's
that
fabulous.
was one of those moments of professional wrestling that is like completely seared into my brain. That
Absolutely.
moment of 1-2-3 Kid upsetting Ted DiBiase and then upsetting Razor Ramon. It's perfection.
Yep.
And like it caught everybody off guard. I think that's probably like the last time that I was like genuinely really surprised by pro wrestling because it was like
Yes.
they completely presented him as a jobber. They just called him the kid. Whatever, get
Yep.
out there, go out there and fight, kid. And it's like, is that guy in my high school class or something? Like
Right.
and
Like,
then
I think
there he
I've seen this
is,
guy at the local, like, 7-Eleven or whatever. Nope. There he is.
right? And there he is beating Ted DiBiase on national television. Mind blown. So
Yeah. It
yeah,
was, yes, like being a kid and watching that was just like, I don't know how he did that, but this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. And when we were watching the Rumble, my husband was like, because I got him into wrestling much later in life, and he was like, "Why is that guy familiar?" I'm like, "That's X-Pac, bud." He's like, "Oh, okay, that's right." I was like, "Yeah, there was a brief time.
Yeah,
Times changed."
it's so funny.
Yeah,
I'm glad you mentioned getting your husband into wrestling. That actually ties into something I want to ask you a little about once we get in here. But I will say that one of the best parts about doing this show and kind of going back through and watching these old wrestling shows is that kind of moment where you're like, oh shit, I totally remember this, and it's buried in there, right? And then you watch it and it brings up all that sort of, you can't ever quite see it the same way as it was the first time, but it's like you can sort of catch a little glimpse of it. You're like, oh, remember when I was young and everything wasn't terrible, and then
yeah,
you feel good for a second.
yep. And I do think there's just something about a Royal Rumble, especially to just conjure that up, because like they were just my favorite as a kid, and even when I came back to wrestling as an adult, I was like, oh, none of the magic is gone from this, because it's chaos. It's
It's
just
chaos,
it's
yeah.
just chaos, and it's designed to have surprises and goofy things and little one-off moments. And watching one from the 90s, I was like, I didn't know I remembered this guy, but suddenly I was like, oh, there's a whole arc in my mind that's happening
mm-hmm.
right now.
Yeah. So we invited Dr. Jess on the show to talk about her work, of course, but in the true spirit of all the WrestleManias, we also asked her to watch and review a wrestling pay-per-view, and she actually chose the 1996 Royal Rumble from Fresno, California, happened in Fresno. And so we're excited to talk about that in just a few moments. But first, I thought we'd just do like I said, a little bit of discussion about your work and how you kind of got to the things that you study and write about. So would you like to just start by giving the listeners a little kind of capsule description of your research interests and the kind of things that you like to talk about?
Absolutely, love to. So, I was, as you mentioned, I have my PhD from the University of Maryland, College Park, their Theater, Dance, and Performance Studies department. And I was actually studying a completely different topic for a brief time. I was studying Civil War theater. So if you have your polls,
Whoa.
Civil War
Wow.
theater to professional wrestling. And I got back into pro wrestling in 2012 because I needed, as anyone who has been in grad school knows, I needed something. I was like, I gotta have something that's separate. And a friend of mine, my friend Adam, who had recently joined the PhD program, was a wrestling fan. And so we actually watched the Rumble in 2012. It was really the first professional wrestling my husband had ever watched. He had some memories. One of his best friends growing up was really into WCW. So he's like, I remember, like, he's like, I remember at the NWO, like I remember some stuff, but he didn't have a huge point of reference. And so as I started watching it through a series of, at the time, unfortunate, but now very fortunate events, my advisor left the university. And I realized that I had really no energy around my project without her there. And Adam said, have you ever thought that you could study professional wrestling, since it obviously is the thing that lights you up? And I said, no, wait, maybe. And we were sort of off from there. And I realized that what I really wanted to do was, there's a lot of really great research on professional wrestling as a performance art. So there's a lot of great books out there. There's a pretty recent dissertation by Eero Lane about pro wrestling and Marxism and capitalism. So there've been a lot of really cool pieces of writing about wrestling, but not a lot of recent studies of wrestling fan culture. A lot of them were focused on the Attitude Era, at least the pieces I could find, and mostly male fans. And so I decided that originally I actually specified female fans of professional wrestling. I broadened that a little bit when some of the interview subjects that I met were non-binary and genderqueer folks. And I said, okay, you know what? We don't need to limit it to female fans. I just want to talk to fans. And through my research, I went to a lot of shows, a lot of kind of fan gatherings, and also conducted interviews with a lot of wrestling fans about what are your memories, what are your experiences. Almost everyone, a lot of the women I talked to were like, my grandma loved professional wrestling. My grandma loved to watch that guy get beat up. One of my friends is like, my grandma loved Eddie Guerrero. I was like, yeah, we all loved Eddie Guerrero. You're correct. But yeah, I don't blame her. Her grandmother was Mexican, and she's like, yeah, I love Eddie. But through the project, I ended up just connecting with so many people who wanted to talk about their experiences, and who just had such wonderful stories of the friendships that they made through pro wrestling, and the way that, obviously, you know, both of you know, wrestling Twitter can be the worst place in the world.
Oh, yeah.
Second only to wrestling Reddit. Just wow. I had a couple of friends who were like, I actually don't post there anymore because, well, I'm a woman. And I was like, that's fair.
That's fair, yeah.
But through doing it, people said, you know, I understand that all of that is out there, but I've also made the most amazing community. And so that ended up being a lot of the focus of what I wrote about, as well as I interviewed some people who, one of my friends, Kate, and I will always drop her, she's Make It Loud on Twitter. She was hired by Rolling Stone to do some graphics for them because she was doing the Raw Breakdown project. She was tracking how much time the women were getting. And so she's a graphic designer. She started visualizing it, and Rolling Stone hired her to do some one-offs, you know, to freelance for them a little bit. My friend Courtney Rose is a hobby makeup artist. She did Chris Hero's makeup when he was Broken Chris Hero against Matt Hardy back in the day.
Wow.
She got to do some different wrestlers' makeup for different shows. And so also got really interested in what fans create. Fans create all kinds of things. We've seen fans, you know, create art and theme music and stories and all different things. And so getting to do that research has been really validating. And I work at the university now, and college kids are pretty impressed when they hear you can write a dissertation on professional wrestling. They're confused.
Hell, I'm impressed.
But they get in this, they're like, oh, you mean research can be, it's corny, but they're like, research can be something you really love? I'm like, yeah, if you are really lucky and you have patience. But yes, it really can. So yeah, that was my journey from Civil War theater to professional wrestling.
So John Wilkes Booth, ultimate heel turn.
Exactly. John Wilkes Booth, ultimate heel turn, that jump on the stage. It's, we've seen dives at wrestling shows before. It's not that different.
I mean, he botched it when he broke his ankle.
He did. But we've unfortunately seen that too. It's happened to the best and worst of us.
Who are your favorite wrestlers, and what draws you to them?
So my favorite current wrestler, I tend to like a lot of cruiserweights and high flyers. So Pac is my absolute favorite wrestler right now. I got into him when he was in NXT, and have followed him since. I was really excited to see him turn back up on a show I could access. When he was wrestling in Japan, it was difficult for me to see a lot of those. I also really love Hiromu Takahashi in New Japan, because you absolutely never know what he's going to do. El Desperado for the same reason. I like wrestlers who tell stories. So if you have kind of an over-the-top character, I'm really going to enjoy it. So Dalton Castle, someone like Eddie Kingston, if you can really talk, if you can really go. I also am a sucker for Supernatural. So, Death Triangle, House of Black, anything like that. The Undertaker was my favorite as a kid. So we don't have to think about The Undertaker as a person. I can think about The Undertaker as a wrestler.
Yes.
The Undertaker as a wrestler was one of a kind.
Yeah, we definitely try to just keep a very focused on him in the ring and him with Paul Bearer. That's all we want to see. That's all we want to know about.
I was watching the Rumble really did remind me, because obviously the Undertaker I have seen in recent years was slower, was, an older person being normal. But seeing like younger, early career Undertaker I was like, that's right. This is what I fell in love with. I was at WrestleMania for Taker versus Punk, which was one of the coolest matches I've ever seen live. Because I can't imagine Paul Bearer was anything but thrilled that he was like, yes, you will be using my death to tell a story. That's what we have to do. You are obligated to do so. And he was correct.
There's no doubt that Percy Pringle, or whatever you want to call him these days, that's exactly what he wants you to do.
Yes.
Like, he didn't die for nothing. You use my story, get me involved. When
we get to 29, we should have you back, because one of the little mini series we've been doing is We Were There, where we try to talk about events that we actually saw in person. So Rich was at King of the Ring 94.
That's so cool.
Which is much cooler than mine, which was Capital Punishment from 2011, which was for shit. But
I hated you for going to that, man.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was at that Mania, and I was at the Rumble that Batista won, that set up Daniel Bryan and the Miracle on Bourbon Street. But
wow,
boy, oh boy, being at that was my first ever live Rumble. I was so excited, and then I was like, someone's going to die here. No one is making out of here alive. The crowd has turned.
Well, you've had You've had some really good shows to go to then.
Yeah, I've been really super, super lucky to see some pretty amazing things. And I was going to say, the only other one that I saw locally was I saw when Sasha brought Bayley up to the main roster for her tag partner. And everyone in the arena just lost their minds. It was in DC. I no longer remember the names of the non-Big Four pay-per-views. I'll be looking that up later.
They're all pretty interchangeable. I don't know that anybody remember, except like Hell in a Cell is easy to remember, right?
That's a good. I was saying Hell in a Cell is a memorable name.
Yeah,
all the rest of them should just be called not WrestleMania.
Yeah, tables, ladders, and chairs. I'm like, okay, except lots of shows have those now, so I don't remember. Which table, ladder, or chair.
On this month's not WrestleMania premium live event.
Yes,
we have. Yeah,
we have the following. It will be 2 nights, and you will learn to love it. I don't want to.
We keep talking about how by the time they get to WrestleMania 50, WrestleMania is just going to last like the entire year. It's just going to be like on all the time.
Yep. They'll have Royal Rumble and then they'll be like, and now it's WrestleMania for the rest of the year.
So let's I thought we could talk a little bit about gender in wrestling, since I know that that's sort of where you kind of started, you know, as you said, as you were trying to kind of develop your research interests and stuff. And, you know, you mentioned getting your husband into wrestling, which I think is really cool. I've sort of done the same with my wife to an extent. And it's, you know, it kind of starts by just sort of proximity, right? Like it's on and she's in the room doing something else. And then she like catches something, or, you know, something catches her eye, or, you know, she starts asking me questions, and now she's like using all of the right terminology. She's like, oh, that guy really got potatoed. And we were watching Raw this week, and she's like, oh, I think Miz got busted open the hard way. I'm like, I married the right woman.
Yeah.
So anyway, but that's from my own anecdotal experience. I've seen a lot, you know, like sort of non-male wrestling fans kind of come to their fandom by accident or association with another family member, with a spouse. Or did the folks that you talked to when you did your oral histories, did you hear much of that? I know you mentioned grandmothers specifically, but
yeah, there was definitely a lot of stories of like siblings or friends. I feel like especially being in school in the 90s, I feel like everyone was watching wrestling. I was, you know, when I was in school, it was kind of like immediately pre-Attitude Era, when I feel like, you know, everyone was sort of growing up watching it. And then it depended on either how cool your parents were or how many friends you had that were still allowed to watch wrestling, and you would just go to their house. Because my mom walked in on a Raw during the Attitude Era and was like, this is over. We're not doing this anymore. I switched to WCW for a time because I was like, this is fine. It's different. Rey Mysterio. But a lot of people, yes, it was sort of that proxy fandom. They started watching with someone else. I did have a lot of friends who in some ways flipped that story on their head, where they got partners of theirs into pro wrestling, but did find that usually when they went to shows, people would talk to the guy that they were with and be like, oh, you dragged your girlfriend here. And she'd be like, he doesn't really want to be here. I dragged him here. And I feel I see more and more women at shows now when I go. Obviously, sometimes it's families, especially when I go to WWE shows. It's a lot of moms with their kids because kids are having a great time. But I do see more women, and it is always funny to me when I see the women like really decked out in, they have the shirts and the belt, and sometimes their partners have the same stuff, and other times they're clearly like, what am I doing here? This is fun. We're going to watch something. So it was interesting because I think that I default assumed that it would be most people had my experience, where you had a dad or a brother that watched it. And I would say that was a solid 60-70%, but the other percent was people who said, no, I was into it and I got men in my life interested in it because it was something I was really into. And I think that once you see wrestling live, it's not a tough sell. I think experiencing it live, you're like, this is absolutely this is just a big theater production. This is amazing. I want to see
I'm
more.
desperately trying to get my wife to come to a live show. So she has started listening to our podcast, and I told her she did not have to listen. She is under no obligation to listen to it. And she started asking me questions about like vocabulary and what different things mean, but I still can't get her to go. And honestly, she gets a bit squeamish with some violence.
Yeah.
And if we sit there and watch AEW today, every other match has got blood, you got cursing and stuff. And it's not like she's like fragile or anything like that. I don't want you to,
No.
It's just that's not going to draw her in.
No.
But like, if we went to a WWE show, she's going to be bored because we're going to be standing in an arena watching everything happen on the Jumbotron, and then one match, and then another hour of Jumbotron watching. So it's this weird, like, I want something in the middle that I might be able to get her to come to.
Take her to Flying V. She's a theater person.
Yeah, I might.
If she likes
I might
theater,
try to
because
she loves theater. So.
You can very much tell with Flying V that it is, all the storylines are crafted by people who are familiar with kind of the arc and the beats of theater, which makes me really happy. But no, I think that's so real, because I think you have to find your in. And actually, my husband, when he really started getting into wrestling, was through Chikara. He likes comic books. He likes superheroes. And so the arc of storytelling that Chikara kind of at its peak was doing was really appealing to him. And the talent in there as well. And I think that one of the best, it's really good to be a fan of wrestling right now, because there's so many options out there, but they're so scattered that, you're like, do I really want to pay? How many streaming services can I pay for? I can't keep doing this. I have to watch something that is available to me.
Right.
It's all out there, but it's not all accessible, which is the challenge. There's probably something for everyone, but you might not be able to get to it.
Yeah, so it's interesting that you've mentioned how the gateways into wrestling. My mother was actually my gateway into professional wrestling. She's the one that called down to me on one Monday night and was like, put on USA, there's wrestling on. And I turn it on and there's Yokozuna versus Coco Beware. So she found the first Monday Night Raw.
That's
and
amazing.
From there, right? And every Saturday was watching Superstars and watching the TBS in the evening. I watched it so young that I didn't know that there was a difference between WCW / Jim Crockett Promotions and WWF. I didn't understand why Ric Flair and Hulk Hogan weren't wrestling each other, but I also didn't care. And so my mother always talked about loving Gorgeous George and the Iron Sheik and Ric Flair. Those were some of her favorites, but she watched into the Attitude Era and she kind of faded off then. But it was interesting that she would never go to a live show with me. It was always my dad who took me, but he wasn't as into wrestling as I was or my mom was. And I don't know if it was my mom didn't feel that it was her place to go. Did you encounter anything like that to where women feel more comfortable to watch on TV and be avid fans that way, but uncomfortable to actually be at a live show?
100%. So it's actually funny because my dad used to rent the tapes for my brothers and I. When we were kids, we would go to, A to Z Video, and we would, if we'd been good that week, we would get to rent whatever pay-per-view we wanted to watch. They only had so many, so we saw a lot of the same ones. And eventually my mom took my brothers to a show, but she would never take me. It's fine. It was not fine when I was a kid. I was mad because all I wanted as a kid was for Bret Hart to give me his glasses. I wanted that with my soul more than I wanted any. Yeah, even now, if he did that, I'd be the happiest person alive.
I would cry real tears for 3 weeks straight if that happened.
I would need to leave. I don't want to see this match. I have these glasses.
Yeah, we're done here.
Yep. This is all.
I'm gonna go home and cover myself up with the sand like SpongeBob.
Yep. I'm just gonna cover my head in a bubble. I never want to take these off.
Is this where I mentioned that I've been licked by a bushwhacker?
Hell yeah. That's where you mentioned that. That is what happens.
That's as close as I've gotten.
That is a claim to fame.
Yeah, Luke got a mouthful of baby powder because I was cosplaying Paul Bearer that night.
That's amazing.
So
that is amazing.
Anyways.
But so there, to jump way back in time, way back before any of us, there's a really amazing book called The Revenge of Hatpin Mary, which is about female pro wrestling fans in the 50s. And how at the time it was, you would, when you would see wrestling shows or, boxing, but especially pro wrestling on camera, there would be these groups of women in the front rows who all were it was a very social thing. They were building this community. And then I do feel like the pendulum really swung, where I knew a lot of women who said, yeah, my mom would never go to, she would never go to a show. She would feel uncomfortable. And unfortunately, I do know even today, which you see it in all kinds of fandoms, wrestling is absolutely not unique. But I have had a lot of women that I've talked to talk about being really gatekept. One of my friends that I interviewed we went to see a Ring of Honor New Japan show out in Coney Island. It was outdoors at the baseball stadium. And a guy sitting in front of her turned and said, pointed at the ring and said, "Which one of them are you sleeping with?" And she kind of, and he goes, "Because a girl like you wouldn't be here if you weren't." And she was just there because she was really excited. She'd been watching pro wrestling since she was a kid. Her dad and mom have always watched wrestling. But the guy in front of her could not fathom that she could just be there to watch a show. She's beautiful. Yes, I know a lot of beautiful women who go to professional wrestling shows. But so many of them have had a bad taste in their mouth from the same kind of, name 5 of his matches. Who's this? One of my friends that I interviewed, their favorite story is that they were wearing a Shinsuke shirt, Shinsuke Nakamura. It was a New Japan show. And a guy came up to them and said, he's not even the best member of Chaos. And my friend was like, "This is an interesting way to say hello. I've never met you." And then he went on a long rant about how actually Goto was the best. At the time, he was not in Chaos. My friend did not get a chance to say, you're not, I don't know what you're, it was a wild time. And so I do think that, as with a lot of things, I've been really lucky. I have met really, really welcoming fans of all genders at a lot of the shows I've been to. And I've taken people to their first wrestling shows, and they have been really lucky because we always end up sitting around enthusiastic and welcoming people. But that is not a universal experience. And I think that a lot of women have been made to feel like wrestling is not for them, which is a shame, because when I have introduced a lot of women to it, once they find the thing that clicks for them, they're like, "This is amazing. I want to see more. How do I see more?" Again, I don't think it's unique. I don't think, I think a lot of fandom culture is like that, a lot of gatekeeping, but it's one of the reasons that my research ended up being about finding community online, because they were able to find like-minded fans who they could talk to and who made them feel welcome. And who kind of started mini fan gatherings that way to say, we're going to make everybody feel welcome and make people feel like they belong at these shows.
So does the sexism that appears in professional wrestling, as in how female wrestlers are presented, from either from just the WWE recently had all their women color coded by hair, to the Attitude Era and how women were treated, all the way to actually the very opening of this 96 Royal Rumble that we watched.
That until it started.
Yeah. So how do non-male wrestling fans interact with that? How do they justify it? And does that also play into the gatekeeping that they feel, that as if well, this is the product that's being shown to me sees me more as an object and a prize than a competitor and a part of the story? Why do I feel welcome to watch this?
Yeah, very much so. And I think also, I would not presume to speak for all Japanese wrestling because I don't watch enough of it, but a lot of Japanese wrestling promotions really cater to women in very specific ways. They have women's fan sections. They sell merchandise that is very much we are selling this for, they have such cool stuff that I'm like, if WWE manufactured this, you would make millions. Do you know how many women want to buy cool teddy bears of their favorite professional wrestlers? I have a Shinsuke teddy bear. It was expensive. It was worth it. If I ever calculated what I've spent on professional wrestling, I would be sad. That's my avocado toast. That's why, I'm like, oh, all my money. I'm a millennial who spent all my money on pro wrestling.
Yeah. Don't do that. It's fine.
Don't go down that road.
Yeah. Whatever cost is good for you.
It got me a PhD. It's great. But I do think that one of the things, that I brought a friend to her first show, and there were 2 or 3 women's matches, which sometimes that's great.
Wow.
Yeah, I was surprised too. But what she didn't understand, genuinely, is she looked at me and said, why don't the men that are sitting near us want to watch the women fight each other? I was like, I don't know. She's like, why are they yelling what they're yelling? I'm like, I don't know. I'm uncomfortable too. And so I think that it ends up being this cycle where wrestling promotions present a product that says women are prizes, and all of their storylines center around like, oh, women are all jealous of each other. I always used to cringe when I knew Jerry Lawler was getting on commentary, because I was like, oh, what are we going to say about those crazy women now and how they all fight? And it's always a cat fight. And I actually think WWE, there are some ways where they've made unbelievable strides in their women's division, where they have these like multiple women's storylines going on at the same time. But I also understand that people have been burned before, and that it's like, how long are you going to let this happen? Like, before they're having a bra and panty match, or before they're backstage fighting over someone's boyfriend, or, some other, that women are inherently jealous of each other. And I think that, women, I think a lot of people, actually, not just women, I think a lot of people want to see good women's wrestling. I also I'm a big fan of intergender wrestling. I'm very in favor of breaking down binaries in wrestling. I think especially with an increase in non-binary and trans wrestlers, I'm all for intergender wrestling. But I do understand why, some of the major companies can't do it for contract reasons. Yeah. I feel like what I've always been told is that with WWE, it was Mattel. Like, part of their Mattel toy contract was don't do intergender. I don't know how much of that is apocryphal. But I always get excited because people, when I end up on panels talking about intergender wrestling, inevitably someone stands up and says, so you're telling me you think Sasha Banks could beat the Big Show? And I'm like, I don't know why that's the first match. You thought you also were telling me
that's not my first idea for booking that.
And I'm I believe that Rey Mysterio has beat the Big Show, and he's not that much bigger than Sasha Banks. So you could. Yeah, he's wee. But people always jump immediately to the most, like, you're telling me that you think like this huge guy should be able to beat up this tiny girl for an hour? And I'm like, whoa, no. That's weird. That's what you think would happen.
Why don't they flip it? You're telling me that Nyla Rose and Hornswoggle could have a good match. Why don't they? Why doesn't the example ever go the other way?
Yeah, no one ever swings it the other way. And then they see intergender, and the other thing about it is they're like, intergender wrestling perpetuates domestic violence. And I'm like, here are two things. One, consent. Professional wrestling is about consent. Two, when you say that, you are saying that the only domestic violence there is intergender domestic violence. Nothing else that happens in professional wrestling perpetuates that. It's just intergender. Okay, I don't understand your logic, but I guess I don't have to.
Yeah, Lucha Underground was big on intergender, and that was one of the best parts about that show. And I think in one of your papers, you actually specifically mentioned, was it Ivelisse and Mil Muertes, maybe?
Yes.
And that dude was freaking huge.
He was terrifying. He was
massive. Yeah, and she was really good. I liked her a lot.
Yeah, I really liked watching her.
We missed that show. We kind of lament.
Oh my god, yeah.
There was a brief time when Lucha Underground was like accessible to rewatch, and I miss it so much because
it's gone again. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, like my favorite things in wrestling are like spooky, scary skeletons and storytelling. So Lucha Underground was pretty much like, Jess, why don't you sit down and watch exactly what you want?
I could watch that Vampiro versus Pentagon Jr. match.
Penta is
every day, all day.
Yep.
And like, I'm not even really into the hardcore stuff, but there's something about that match. It's like the story, like you don't know who Penta is following and worshiping, and then it turns out to be Vampiro, the owner of the company, is running like a dark cult underground. Like, oh my god, that's amazing. And then he sets him on fire, and like the arm breaking finisher, like that. It's all crazy.
It's unbelievable, like some of the stuff that they were able to pull off. And I think that there's so many wrestlers where like they make their debuts elsewhere, and I'm like, I need you to go back and I need you to watch them on Lucha Underground before you tell me that you don't understand what's appealing about them. I'm like, trust me, when they're allowed
that
to
guy
be nuts.
Angelico.
Yeah, Angelico, Swerve Strickland.
Yep.
I forget what his name was on Lucha Underground, but he was very good. And he also had another, like, I'm also not a huge hardcore fan, but the way Lucha Underground did it for storylines, I was like, yeah, this is fine.
Thunder Rosa was there.
Yep.
She was like a snake lady or something.
Yes, she was a cool snake lady. Io Shirai was there, I think.
Brian Cage, of course.
Yes. Prince Puma.
Prince Puma. Poor Ricochet. I feel so bad. I don't want to get off on a tangent, but like that guy, talk about getting screwed by the WWE system. Like they took every single thing that made him amazing as Prince Puma and just scraped it all off. And like, hey, here's a generic guy now, and he gets beat up all the time.
And I'm like, no.
It makes me so sad. He was so damn good. I could watch this shit all day. Yeah. Just not to get off on a tangent here, but like your thoughts, your comments about kind of supernatural and stuff. Have you or your husband read Do a Powerbomb yet? It's a new comic series.
No, but now I clearly need to.
I think we're only up to the second issue. The setup is this woman faces her big nemesis in the ring. It's this huge guy, and he ends up paralyzing her and killing her, actually. Not, spoiler alert. But her daughter gets approached by this like kind of Shao Kahn Mortal Kombat type thing. He's like, what if you could bring your mother back? And he's going to have a huge wrestling tournament in the underworld to fight for her mother's soul. So I'm all in.
That sounds amazing.
Yep. And the art is like gritty and dark and like way over the top. You would love it.
Yeah, that sounds perfect.
Sorry, I mean to get off on a tangent. We could talk about this forever. Maybe one more thought about this sort of the gender stuff and your comments about the Japanese promotions and kind of that targeted marketing. I'm just curious about your thoughts on AEW heels. I read a really funny piece from Harmony Cox on the Daily DDT, and she cites some of your work. And she said,
yes, because Harmony and I were back and forth about
and the quote that I pulled out is says there are plenty of women who find hyper-feminized marketing insulting, especially when it is tied to paying extra for something just because you identify as female. AEW heels feels like the wrestling version of Bic pens for her.
Yep.
Great.
Yep. It was one of those things that I was like, what a lovely idea and awful execution. Like how, because I think fundamentally, a lot of times when promotions try to launch this, like, we have discovered that there are women who like our product, and surely you would like to pay $50, and I think it was, people are like, oh, it's only $50 a year. I'm like, to do
for what?
I can talk to people on Twitter for free.
Right. It's not like the WWF fan club that would send you like a little camera and a tote bag and like it give you the subscription to WWF magazine. This is $50 because you're a woman and you like wrestling.
Yeah. And I think that like there were so many people I know who arrange like meetups at wrestling shows or before or after, and being in the DMV area, like when there are shows in DC, I usually end up in pre-COVID times. It's like, oh yeah, there's so many bars here. We'll just do a meetup at this, bar, or in Chicago, I've done meetups at barcades. There are a lot of ways to make community that don't cost anything. And I think that it's one thing to offer women options to say, here are seats that are priced the same as other seats, but you'll be surrounded by fans of your gender. It's another to be like, would you like to pay a premium to have a gender? And I'm like, I wouldn't. That's I'd prefer not to. I do that every day. I would really rather not do it in my entertainment because it's the same. And I think sometimes there are people who mean really well and they create things, and they're someone created a publication at one point, and they were like, this is the first time anyone has written about wrestling as an art form. And the number of people, even just on Twitter, who were like, oh, buddy, no,
You tried
it's
it.
not. Like, I can list decades of people writing about wrestling as an art form, and not just academics, plenty of people writing in really accessible ways. Please don't say that. You're just asking for trouble. Just publish your thing and say, here is a cool thing I made about professional wrestling. Don't tell me that I should buy it because no one else is doing this.
Yeah, I think just to wrap up that thought there's another quote in that article. I think actually I can't remember if it's her or if she's quoting you. She says, or you say, I don't know, community isn't something you buy, it's something you build. Real community among wrestling fans of marginalized genders already exists, and you don't need anyone to sell you a ticket to it. I thought that was a really nice sort of punctuation mark on the whole thing, And
Yep.
I also, I'm not a woman, but I wouldn't necessarily look to Brandy Rhodes as kind of my paragon of what it means to be to identify as female in today's modern world.
No, and I do also, I think that the thing that really, and I know I talked to Harmony about it, I talked to some others, it really was such a don't you want to have makeover tips from professional wrestlers? And I was like, what is this 17 magazine? No, that is not what I want to talk to. And some of them have amazing makeup. It looks really cool. Yeah. I'd love to hear about it, but I would like to hear about other things too.
Bring out your smoky eye with a boot to the face.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So I feel like we could probably talk about this stuff easily for another hour. And it would be great.
Yeah.
So you're just going to have to come back. But we do want to have some time to get to, of course, the Royal Rumble from '96.
Oh, we got to talk about the Royal Rumble.
Oh,
Is there anything else? Is there anything you want to plug or anything before we move on to that bit?
No, I feel like I have covered a lot of it, and I have a feeling that I will, as you say, I'll have to come back because I'll remember other stuff that I want to share.
At the very least, you got to come back for WrestleMania 29.
Oh yeah.
But I would love to talk some more about some of this fan stuff is endlessly fascinating to me.
Yes,
and I think
unbelievable.
I don't know how many wrestling podcasts you listen to, but the sort of kind of divide between the wrestling has to be this way people and the hey, let's just watch what you like people. It's very real. And I think on this show we try to sort of hey, this is some things that we like, and we shit on things we don't like, and that's that's cool. That's part of being a fan. But also I don't care if you like that. If you like Kenny Omega, more power to you. He's not for me, but whatever.
Every wrestler, there will always be someone who doesn't like a wrestler, and it's a style choice. It's a performance choice. It is all good. I only am going to have a problem. It's one of the things I appreciated listening to your show, that I was like, oh yeah, this is not going to be a show where someone is going to be like, by the way, whatever opinion you have, I'm here to change it. I'm like, I don't have time for that.
Rich's favorite wrestler is Doink, so we let that breathe.
Doink is not my favorite wrestler. I just enjoy the gimmick. He's not my favorite wrestler. Stop spreading fake news.
He gets so defensive. His second favorite wrestler is actually Duke the Dumpster. So this is a really good pay-per-view for him.
I was saying, this was a solid.
Yeah,
this is a solid show for you.
He's going to rate this a 10 stars out of 5.
I was going to say,
none of these things are true. None of these things are true.
So defensive. Anyway, all right, let's get into it. This is the Royal Rumble 1996, January 21st, 1996. What was I doing? I guess I was starting my second semester of college there. This is from the Selland Arena in beautiful Fresno, California. Attendance is 9,600, so a relatively small show, and the pay-per-view buys on this one are 260,000. Again, about a quarter of what a WrestleMania around this time was doing. The tagline for this one is maybe aptly, I'm not sure, "You've been warned." I'm not sure how to feel about that.
No.
And the commentary team on this one is Vince McMahon with all of the yelling, and the inimitable Mr. Perfect, who I think gets to say roughly 12 words on this whole show. So did you have any background on this particular Royal Rumble?
At this point in time, you mentioned how small the audience is, and that is because WWF is losing its ass to WCW. Nitro has aired, and the NWO hasn't even started, but Nitro is beating Raw. WCW is just whipping it because they do have Hogan, they have Macho Man, they have the names that people remember, and WWE is still, like, they call it the new generation, but it's really a transition period. They're trying to figure out, like, who's going to come out of this, and this show really, really highlights that. This is Steve Austin's first WWF pay-per-view appearance, and like I said, we're right on the cusp of the Attitude Era. Things are about to get hardcore. We're months away from Steve Austin giving his Austin 316 says I just whipped your ass promo, destroying Jake the Snake. This is Mabel's last appearance until 1998. He disappears, and the Click is very prominent on this show, even though we're getting very close to losing Scott Hall and Kevin Nash to WCW. Scott Hall actually disappears after this for failing a drug test, and then he fights like one or two more matches, and then he shows up on Nitro and with his "You all know who I am" line. But like Hall and Nash are like WWF's two hottest stars at this point. You can hear the crowd just going crazy for them, especially Hall as Razor Ramon. The crowd loves him. I'm going to repeat my opinion from several other shows that I've said, that WWF should have thrown all the money at him. Just throw all the money at him, keep him there, don't allow the NWO to form. Scott Hall is a stud. He's been a stud since the AWA. What are you doing?
I was wearing my Razor Ramon socks today in preparation for this, so I feel like I'm amped up. Now, Jess, do you remember watching this one back in the day?
Yes, I remember watching this. This was probably one of the last ones that we would have bought live. But honestly, I mean, most of what I remembered was I remembered the winner. I remembered that Bret Hart match. And then I was like, all of this other stuff happened on here. Huh. Couldn't have told you that. Did not remember that. Some of these guys I don't remember, but it was with Scott Hall, especially, like, watching it back. I don't think I realized as a kid how nuts the crowd was for him, because, especially watching wrestling when I was young, like I like a lot of heels more now than I did when I was a kid. Like, when I was a kid, I was like, no, the good guy's supposed to win. That's how it goes. But like, just listening to that crowd response to everything he did. And did you, when you guys watched it, because when I was watching it, that weird, like, WCW parody ad thing?
Yep.
I was like, again, my husband had never seen this Rumble, and so he was like, they weren't even a little bit subtle. And I'm like, no. No, this was not an era of subtlety. Like, there was not, if there was a subtle era of WWF, I don't know it. But this one was especially not interested in being subtle.
Yeah, that's the Billionaire Ted skit where a really terrible Ted Turner. They're all really terrible. There's a fake Hawk and a fake Macho Man and a fake Ted Turner, and they're all sitting around a table talking about how they're gonna, get their groove back and beat the WWE. The only thing I noted for that one is, Jesus, Vince McMahon as a child, like,
yep.
that's right in his, like, mind grapes. That's like, that's direct from the brain of Vince McMahon, and he's like, yep. Oh yeah, I'm really gonna stick it to him with this one, that Ted Turner.
I'll counter back at you that those skits are kind of a reaction to the stuff WCW was doing, such as leaking Raw results on Live Nitro.
Yeah.
So making fun of the Huckster and the Nacho Man.
Those really are the most, like, Vince McMahon parody names. He's like, hold on, I've got it.
Yeah.
This is going to be hilarious. I'm like, okay, bud.
You know, the macho, it rhymes with nacho, you guys. You get it? It rhymes with nacho. Yeah.
WWF had squandered Lex Luger,
Yep.
the opportunity that they had with him, and then Luger shows up on the first episode of Nitro without telling anybody. Like he was on Raw, and then suddenly he's walking out
Yep.
on Nitro at the Mall of America, which was crazy. I don't want to go off into a tangent, but that was kind of a shocking thing that Nitro for WCW, generally a Southern promotion, puts its first show in Minnesota.
Yeah.
That's kind of it was kind of weird. But anyways,
I'm also still like, my mind is still blown regularly that it was like, by the way, here's Jushin Thunder Liger. It's like, what? Okay,
yeah,
that's fine.
yeah. I've watched like the first 2 years of Nitro again because I used to channel flip back and forth, but now with Peacock, I've watched like the first 2 years of Nitro. And it's so crazy how the NWO's appearance in 97 is a harsh dividing line. It's like everything before that was Jim Crockett Promotion wrestling. It's all mostly mat based. It's very technical. Everybody's using normal names. There's no real gimmicks except for a few like Oz. But like it's much more straightforward. It's Southern wrestling. And then suddenly the NWO shows up and it's like they're fighting WWF. They're trying to be WWF instead of staying the course, because they could have just kept presenting what they were presenting and they would have survived just fine, much longer than what they did anyways.
Yeah.
So in terms of this show itself, I could talk about this all day. Actually, so, moving here to Norfolk, there's a long history of wrestling here, and I had two separate people this week mention the show where Raw was in like Hampton, and is that right? And WCW was in Norfolk, and they brought the tank over.
Yep, when they did the invasion.
Yeah, the invasion. I had two separate people mention that to me this week, so it's like it's clearly still on people's minds here, and there's a long history of wrestling in this. Anyway, so I imagine you probably have some thoughts on the little thing that starts this show on the Peacock.
Yep. It was again, as I said, I was like, oh, I forgot about this. I forgot. And again, I understand that, in comparison to what was to come in the Attitude Era, that was wholesome. Like, oh, she's just in a bath. But it really did feel, I was like, that's right. Even by 1996, because I was a teenager, this was a product that was on its way to making me feel unwelcome, because I'm being greeted by something that is like, this is what we think women should be doing. This is, really that you're not going to get any women on this show, except you're going to get Sunny and you're going to get Marlena for the first time, which I had forgotten it was her first time. And there's not going to be, any of the women that you might remember from being a kid. We're past that now, and we're not really at a phase where we're having women's wrestling yet.
Yeah, it's weird. Like it's the sort of, she does, the viewer discretion is advised, as if there's going to be, if this is like Silk Stockings or something. But it's, I mean, it's just like guys beating each other up. It's not, even when there's women.
Yeah, and even, again, by comparison, it's like, yes, when Sunny is there, she's in a short skirt and a top. She's not, coming out with handprints for a bra. Like it's just we're not at Sable yet. We're at a different era.
It's a really a harsh juxtaposition that happens. Is like you have Sunny in the bathtub. Viewer discretion is advised. And there's candles, and it's all soap opera-y, like fuzzy picture. And then you get the live shot of the audience, and it's like a WrestleMania 7 crowd where it's a bunch of kids.
Yep.
It's a very high pitched scream of kids being excited for wrestling.
Yep, there's kids, and you see women there, especially who are, I always love when you see it with Razor Ramon, you see it with different wrestlers that the camera and the crowd, the writers have decided women find this guy attractive, and they just cut to the women in the crowd, just being like, yes, more blood. I want to see them fight, and it's amazing. And then there's Jeff Jarrett. God bless him.
Jeff Jarrett and Ahmed Johnson.
Yep. Jeff, if you had told me in 1996, hey, don't worry, in 2022, Jeff Jarrett's still going to get bookings, I would have said no. No, he's not. But he is. He is.
Oh, he's a darling of the industry.
Yep.
So it's like he's what, third generation,
Mm-hmm.
and he's just so like you still. This is one of the reasons why I like this era of wrestling is that you still have the old territory wrestlers fighting, and people that started in the territories are fighting, even though the territories are pretty much dead. The territory guys fighting the guys that didn't come up through the territories.
And it was interesting because I had honestly forgotten that there was, even during the Rumble, there's that brief kind of throwaway mention of like, oh yeah, this guy had qualified from a territory to get to be in the Rumble.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh,
the
right.
one guy won the tournament from the USWA. And then at one point in the commentary, McMahon actually mentions that someone is a former NWA world champion.
Yeah.
So it's like the remnants of the territories are still vibing through. And it's one of those fun things to see as a person that gets into the story of wrestling and the history of wrestling, to have that still resonating, because you're not going to hear the phrase NWA world champion on Monday Night Raw now anymore.
Mm-mm.
You might hear it on AEW.
Yeah.
But you're not going to hear it on WWE.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, it's interesting. They're still sort of using that territory history to kind of give their guys legitimacy, like this continuity, this history. So, I mean, this match is all right. Jarrett kind of starts by getting the heat on Ahmed. Ahmed was such a big dude. He had a good run. He had a good push. He was injury prone and sort of flamed out relatively early. I always get a kick out of his like pouches all over his arms. He reminds me of a Rob Liefeld character if you're into comics. Like, yo, bro, I heard you like pouches, so I put some pouches on your pouches.
Yep.
He does a pretty good comeback by hawking up. He dances in a little circle to get his hawk up. I didn't know what was going on there.
It's kind of like an Ultimate Warrior kind of hawking up version where he jogs in place and does a little circle around the ring while taking the hits.
I'll have to try that at work next time.
Yeah. Tough day.
When a meeting starts getting you bogged down, you just stand up and start trotting around and shaking your head. I didn't note much on this match, just because one, I don't like Jeff Jarrett. In my opinion, he's another Ric Flair clone and not nearly as good. But Ahmed was a monster of a man, and he's impressive every time we've seen him and every time we've talked about him. And it really is a shame that he didn't get to that championship level, just because he's everything that Vince would like, you would think, because Vince loved the big, muscle-bound bodybuilder look, especially in this time period, because he's still missing Hulk Hogan. And so if he could get another guy that looks like that, like Ahmed Johnson, then I don't see how he didn't shoot straight to the top. And I know Ahmed eventually basically had his career ended by Ron Simmons hitting him in the back and like damaging his kidney, and that was pretty much it. But the only things that I noted in this was that like Jeff Jarrett jumps from the ropes into Ahmed's arm, and Ahmed doesn't even flinch catching Jeff Jarrett.
He's so strong.
There's a very awkward figure four, and there's a beautiful airbrush Shawn Michaels shirt in the front row that I just couldn't stop staring at every time the camera caught it. That was just a thing of beauty.
Yeah. The only other thing I noted during this one was I was like, right, chair shots were still allowed. Because there was a much more direct chair shot to the head that I was like, right, we didn't stop that yet. Gosh. And of course that I was like, yep, we are still doing we're going to end a match, with a good old fashioned, at least I was like, oh, right. We did occasionally get referees disqualifying guys for hitting you over the head with a guitar.
Yeah.
Instead of being like, I missed it. I don't know how that guitar got around your head. I was like, no, we know how that guitar got around his head, and we're going to disqualify him. But
Double J goes up to the top and comes down with the guitar and smashes it like directly over Ahmed's head, and then is immediately disqualified. Like, just go directly to jail. Do not pass
Yep,
go.
we're not
And
entertaining this. You're
Ahmed
done.
does a nice like back bump and like, you know, pretends to be unconscious, and then he sort of like wakes up, and I thought it was very theatrical actually, the finish of that. He kind of wakes up and he's like looking around, and the crowd is like pointing him in the direction of Double J, who's like hightailed it up the tunnel. So it's a little bit like children's theater, you know, like, well, where'd he go? Where'd he go? So he goes booking after him up the aisle, and then he gets to the curtain, and you can see Jeff Jarrett like just beyond the curtain, just like walking, and he just starts walking like, guys, the camera's still on you. Maybe just
right. It's like, Jeff, you gotta commit,
keep
man.
going.
Like, if you're gonna do it.
Yeah.
And then I think, at some point later in the show, they're like, by the way, he's sustained some real serious injuries from Jeff Jarrett. I'm like, okay,
Sure,
fine. Thanks for reminding us that match happened earlier in the night. I guess that's what you're doing.
You'll be on Raw tomorrow night. No worries.
Don't you worry about that.
The next match on the card is for the WWF Tag Team Championship. It's the Body Donnas with Sunny. So the Body Donnas are Skip, who is Chris Candido, and Zip, who is Dr. Tom Pritchard, versus the Smoking Guns, Billy Gunn, of course, who we know and love, and Bart Gunn, who's been around in a variety of gimmicks. This one, I don't know. I didn't write a whole lot for this one. There's a lot of chaos here. Sunny gets bumped at one point, and there's some drama with Billy going to help her and then getting ambushed. I kind of yawned. I kind of maybe didn't pay as much attention as I should have. Did you guys catch anything in this one?
Just it was a very rock and roll express kind of match where Billy Gunn just gets his ass beat for like 10 minutes and then suddenly hot tag, but the hot tag didn't lead to the finish, which was really frustrating. There was chants in the crowd for kick her ass. So we're getting into we're getting that attitude crowd a little bit, to wanting to see a woman get her ass beat. And I mean, Sunny's annoying. There's no doubt. But to the point of deserving a beatdown from somebody, I don't know.
And the only other thing that I had really noted was, like, again, and, you know, there were occasional like admonishments for it, but like so much of the commentary was just like, oh man, isn't Sunny hot? By the way, there's a match, but isn't she beautiful? And I'm like, again, this has gone on for a long time. This is not, commentators doing that. It's not new. But, it was odd to me to occasionally hear Vince McMahon admonish someone to like focus on the match. I was like, what? Oh, right. That's right. For a brief time, we were asked to believe that he would tell someone to do that.
Yeah.
And again, Sunny, like, they do manage to get a couple of shots up her skirt, but it is still comparatively a lot tamer than things we would see later on.
Yeah, I think we actually missed the hot tag because the camera is focused on Sunny during it. So, I was unaware that a match was happening.
Yep.
So,
I can't.
That's okay.
Is there still wrestling happening? There's a lady.
No, yeah. Well, you know how it is. So the Smoking Guns get to keep the belts. I don't know that anybody really cares. We get that Billionaire Ted skit then that we mentioned. I got a kick out of that. I laughed a little bit. Just by how kind of cheesy and cheap it is, you know. And then let's get into it. We've got the one and only Scott Hall's Razor Ramon versus Goldust with Marlena. This is a WWF Intercontinental Championship match. So this is we were talking about things that haven't aged well. The primary motivation here is Goldust's continued pursuit of Razor Ramon as an object of his lust, which he's had a little trouble with before with some other wrestlers, and for whatever reason he's fixated on Scott Hall. I mean, well, for whatever reason, like, look at that guy. Like, what are you gonna do? So that's kind of how we got to the point. They have to fight about it now because Goldust is sexually attracted to Razor Ramon, and there's just no choice. They have to fight. It's in the bro code, I think. So where do y'all want to start with this match? Because this is a good one.
This one has lots of storytelling in it. Like, my dad actually watched this match with me. He was over, and we were hanging out with the kid, and the kid went to take his nap. So I was like, Dad, we're going to watch the 1996 Royal Rumble a little bit. And he was like, all right, I'll watch whatever. So, and we get to this match, and like, so there's a lot of opening chaos. There's a lot of like Goldust flirting and then dodging Razor, taunting him, trying to get into his head, poking at his fragile masculinity, and stuff like that. And my dad commented that, it's, if I had paid all this money to go see a wrestling show and this is how the wrestling match starts, I'd be upset that like they're not fighting. And I was like, Dad, Goldust is doing all the tactics that Ric Flair does. This match starts just out how Ric Flair does. Like there's a little connection, and then they break, and Flair taunts. Flair will dodge out of the ring to avoid contact. He gets frustrated, stuff like that. Like he intentionally like drags out the opening to build heat from the crowd. My dad was like, yeah, I guess you're right. And I was like, so why is it okay for Ric Flair to do that tactic, but Goldust's character can't do that?
It felt a lot, because again, as a kid, obviously, I feel like, you bought into this, like, oh, this is like being like young enough to be like, this is weird. And I don't know why it's weird. And I don't know what's happening. And like watching kind of the lead up videos that they were showing and hearing the crowd, who again, it is Scott Hall, who I don't blame people for being behind Scott Hall. He's amazing. But like the kind of like the kicker ass chants for Sunny, it was uncomfortable to watch a crowd be so vocally behind a man beating up a queer-coded man. That they were like, yup, that's what he deserves. He's flirting. It's gross. He should get his ass kicked. And it was uncomfortable because, again, I'm watching Goldust do this, he's amazing. He's doing all of this great character work and all of this wonderful stuff. And Marlena is now there, and the commentary is visibly confused because they're like, what does a man like Goldust get? Like, what's a woman like that doing with him? And it's like, you're doing everything but saying he is gay. Why would a lady be with him? But like watching with my husband, he was like, so this is 2 years before Laramie, huh? And I'm like, yeah. This is what like WWF is telling us. And again, it's story work, it's character work. But I was like, I am distracted from how good both of these men are, how these are two top competitors, because like this is very much a crowd being like that uncomfortable queer man deserves to get his ass kicked for trying to flirt with him. And yeah, I mean, again, there was a lot of great storytelling. There were a lot of great moments. Marlena blowing the Goldust in Razor's face, and that still didn't end them. I'm like, nope, we've still got more time. That's not the distraction that'll get it. Like, there were so many good things in the match, and yet I was watching it with just such a feeling of like, oh, that's right, I forgot. That's what it was like to watch these when he first started.
Yeah. Well, the WrestleMania that follows this one in March of '96 is the one with Piper and Goldust, where the storyline is the same thing. It's like, this guy hit on me, I'm going to beat him up in an alley and hit him with my car, like, and a baseball bat. And it is. When we did the WrestleMania 12 review, we talked about that a good bit. It kind of like it's not good. It's very uncomfortable to watch it now.
It's almost wholesome that it's like, oh, thank God the reason that this ended was because of the 1, 2, 3 kid. Like, okay, that's fine. Thank God. There didn't have to be anything else.
The flip side of that, though, and something we've commented on before, is just, like you said, just how freaking ballsy is Dustin Runnels, like, just going out there and just freaking going for it, like just kissing dudes and being in his lingerie and like, and some of the, I mean, taking that gimmick on the road was probably outright dangerous in a lot of places, and like, just, I don't know, like you said, he's so good in the ring but it does get kind of overshadowed by the gimmick and the reaction to the gimmick.
Yeah, they're both working like heels in this match.
Yes.
Razor's doing low blows and Cheap Shots, and Goldust is doing the same stuff, but Razor's the crowd favorite because, I mean, we don't need to keep beating that dead horse. We know why Razor's the fan favorite. He's not in a gold unitard and coming out with a gold boa and cinematography. The only real difference between this and the Piper angle is that the Piper angle also fed in footage of the O.J. Simpson car chase.
I remember that.
So we already had dealing with openness, with sexual feelings, and now we're going to layer in this nice cake frosting of racism on top of it. You know, that's WWF's perfect style, and that's like, what was that, 3 years after the OJ stuff, and they were still using that footage. But we don't need to.
That's another
really dig into that. But like, it's uncomfortable to watch in the modern eye, but also it's an interesting angle that they would be so bold to use the toxic masculinity of Razor Ramon in such a story, and then like the blurred sexuality of Goldust, and then they add that extra layer to where there's also real sexual tension between him and Marlena characters too. So the crowd can't just be like, oh well, that's a gay guy.
Yeah,
because he's like, I and Marlena, and then Marlena's character too. She's not like your typical female valet wrestling manager valet type character, or like eye candy. She's doing things on the sideline that's like, she's trying to frame the shot, that she's like the director of the whole show, and that she's the boss of Goldust kind of angle, to where, so you have this real interesting mix that's like really bold for WWF to kind of be portraying at this time period, even though when we look at it with our modern eyes, it's kind of it hurts a little bit.
Yeah, like the number of times during the match that Marlena is like, I know I'm beautiful, now watch the ring. Like, deliberately pushing back and being like, no, we're not going to do the sunny thing with me. Like, I'm a director. I'm here to... With her strange usher. I forgot that there was just a guy dressed in like a 20s usher costume who was also going to be there. Like, that's right.
It's layers, man. Layers upon layers. Somebody needs to write their thesis on Goldust.
They really do.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that they could do there. So yeah, so 1, 2, 3 kid comes in, nails Razor, so Goldust can take the belt. So we swap the belts there.
Yeah, so Goldust wins the belt, and he was actually supposed to have a rematch with Razor at WrestleMania 12. But Razor got suspended for the drug use. Razor finally comes back in April, loses to Vader, and then he's gone. He's off the WCW, his contract not renewed.
Oof.
The Piper angle was kind of a pivot, and it seems like they just basically took the storyline and inserted Roddy Piper into it, as opposed to keeping Razor in it.
Yeah, they didn't adjust that at all. So now comes one of my favorite parts of the Royal Rumble show, and that's for all the different wrestlers to give their like 15-second promo about why they're going to win. These are always so much fun. I enjoy these so much. So from watching these, I think Barry Horowitz is definitely going to take it.
I mean, Barry Horowitz is always one of my favorites. He went from jobber to having a very brief push, and then disappears, and he comes out to the Hava Nagila, and I
love it.
It's like, hey everybody, there's a Jewish wrestler coming to the ring.
Don't worry, guys.
What's his gimmick? He's Jewish. Oh, so his religion is his gimmick?
Yep.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Sort of, yeah. So is Barry Horowitz Daniel Bryan before Daniel Bryan? Because like he was kind of like pushed because he was a fan favorite, right? Like, and it was sort of like an improbable thing, and maybe they just kept harassing people about give Barry Horowitz a shot. I don't know. It's pre-internet, so it's a little harder to generate that kind of fan pressure.
I do sometimes wonder, I'm like, who would the internet campaigns have been for? Like, who would, the fans have really wanted to see?
Brooklyn Brawler.
Yeah, always. It's always the Brooklyn Brawler.
Yeah. So let's see. So this is the Royal Rumble, the 30 man main event here for the WWF Championship match at WrestleMania 12. So we're in the point where if you win the Rumble, you get that shot at the belt. Triple H and Henry O. Godwin of the Godwin brothers start out. Bob Backlund is next. He's such a weird looking dude. Such a weirdo.
I hated his comeback. I just did not like it. I don't like, and he's like running for president, and they're going to make him champion. Like, wow, it's stupid. I don't, whatever. Triple H actually has the number one draw because he lost a match at the pre-show to Duke the Dumpster Drosy, who you claim is my favorite.
Your second favorite after Doink. Yeah.
Yeah. So Triple H. So the winner of that match got number 30. The loser got number 1. Triple H got number 1. And for a while, they kind of make you feel like Triple H might actually do the Shawn Michaels from the year before, but he's not ready. That's not happening.
I literally rewound and watched it again because I forgot how much I love when Jake the Snake clears a ring, when he's like, hold on, I gotta dump a snake out. All right, back in the bag you go. Okay, we're gonna wrestle now. Because I love Jake the Snake. He is amazing and has cut some of the best promos that have ever been. But
he's got the sexiest music.
Yep. And
that music. Boy.
And just truly like walking out and being like, we all know what's gonna happen here. I have a bag. You know what we all know what's gonna happen. This is a very large snake. And then my handler's here and he's going to take him away because we don't want to stress the snake out, which I do appreciate.
Well, I like that he's wearing like the sleeveless, like Tommy Bahama shirt. Cause like, this is like fat Jake the Snake. Like this is not, prime lean and mean Jake the Snake. So he's like me in the swimming pool in like 7th grade. I'm like, I'm just going to wear my shirt and nobody's going to notice that I'm a fat kid. So I appreciate that for Jake. Jerry Lawler gets a big pop when he comes out. Bob Holly's, this is in his race car driver gimmick, but he's going by Bob Holly. He's not what was he called with the
Spark Plug?
Sparky Plug.
Yeah, Sparky Plug. Yeah. Oh, your third favorite wrestler. I forgot. Yeah. How could I forget? King Mabel looks like a baby. He looks like a giant, smooth,
very tall baby.
Yeah. And then we get Dory Funk Jr., which is a really weird addition.
Yep.
He looks like he's 70. He's always looked like he's 70.
He was born 70, I think.
Yeah. I was running a little stopwatch, and they were keeping honest pretty much to the 2-minute timer between entrants as well.
Oh, interesting.
So I decided to keep track of that because sometimes it did feel like it was a really long time, and then sometimes it felt like really short. But they were keeping honest with the 2 minutes.
When I thought about it, I'm like, I think the ones where it felt really short was because someone had there was business that was happening that took a while before they properly started wrestling.
There's a big contrast between this and just the most recent other Royal Rumble that we watched. The 92 Royal Rumble that we watched. Yeah. So like, this is just 4 years later, and they have the similar format to where it starts out with one face and one heel, and then a barrage of heels come down in those first early numbers. But they're not grouping together like they did in the 92 Royal Rumble and in previous old days. Like the whole, like they're really doing the every man for themselves kind of stuff. But I ended up not liking that. I wanted to see the heels gang up on the face, and then the faces, then a face entrance comes down and saves and gets a big turnaround in the momentum of the match and stuff. And so this match this Royal Rumble over in general just felt very, very blah, very no drama, no peaks and no valleys, just because it was a constant barrage of people coming in, but the faces were fighting each other. The heels were fighting each other. The faces and the heels were fighting each other. There was no organization to the chaos of the match, in my opinion.
And it felt like there were a couple of moments, again, even on commentary, where they were like, well, like, why isn't anybody working together to get Vader out, to get Yokozuna out, to get Vader out? Like, you could get the big guys out if you all just, no? Okay. I guess you're not gonna do that. And some of that is, it's what I expect to see. I'm like, if there's a big guy in the Royal Rumble, a bunch of little guys are going to try to lift him up, and then they're going to fall down.
Right.
And it's a classic moment.
The old Andre spot.
It also was. I was like, we really aren't going to do that. We're just, because, obviously I haven't, it's not 1996. I haven't been watching the programming from them. So it wasn't super clear if there were storylines coming into the match. Occasionally they would, commentary would point out, oh, these guys have been fighting for a while, but it wasn't really clear, like, oh yeah, these guys have something going on right now, and that's why they're zeroing in on each other.
Yeah, it's very flat, and it seems very random. Like you said, it's just sort of like, it's like this happens, then this happens, then this happens. So Lawler goes and hides under the ring. That's his strategy. He's gonna just camp out and see if nobody notices. Yokozuna comes in. That's a kind of exciting moment. He tosses Backlund, and that's the very first elimination. It takes a full 12 minutes to get there, which is a long time as far as these matches go. Vince and Perfect are excited about Mabel versus Yokozuna, and those guys kind of go at it in the corner a little bit. Let's see. Let's do just kind of rapid fire.
Vince has no idea what's happening.
No, he really doesn't.
Neither one of Vince is lost through this whole thing. He doesn't use names. He doesn't use move names. He doesn't say anything except for like, oh yeah, and here he comes. And like when Savio Vega actually comes out, he the buzzer hits and the music happens and he goes, here he comes. Here who comes? Like.
And especially because I'm like, you're not putting up names on the bottom. So in some cases, I'm like, no, but really, who comes? Someone.
Yeah.
Someone tell me who's coming.
Who is that? Yeah. Yeah. 1, 2, 3 Kid comes in. Takao Omori lasts less than 3 minutes before Jake and Triple H put him out. There's Savio Vega. He tosses Dory Funk. And then the man they call Vader. That's the other kind of next sort of big peak there. And they keep calling him that. They keep calling the man they call Vader every time. It's like a tick. It's very, I don't know if you noticed that. It's really weird.
It's either the man they call Vader or what's it called? The Mastodon?
Yeah.
Like either that, they're like the Mastodon. I'm like, that's just Vader. That's Vader, everybody. Don't get confused. There's not another person in here.
Yeah, I want to see the Mastodon.
That's all Vince does when he does commentary is he lands the company lines over and over again, just pounding it into your head. He's the man they call Vader. He's the Mastodon. He's the man they call Vader. The man they call Vader just took a dump. The man who called Vader just threw a guy over the top rope, and it was like they set Doug Gilbert on him. Like, oh my God! Like, boy, Doug Gilbert. They're getting desperate to fill 30 people in this ring if they're bringing Doug Gilbert up.
Then there's a tag team. There, if you look it up on Wikipedia, it says Squat Team number 1 and Squat Team number 2. Not SWAT team, Squat Team, as in guys who squat or who are squat, or they're the headhunters from some other promotion, right? They're twins.
I think they were ECW guys. I think they were the headhunters.
They're very round, large bodies and very small, round heads. They look like miniature snowmen.
I was just like, that's Abdullah the Butcher, right? That's Abdullah the Butcher. That's who that is, right? And I was like, no, it's not. I Googled it, but like they're wearing his shoes.
Yep.
They're wearing his like outfit type. And I was like, how is that not Abdullah the Butcher? But it's just two fake Abdullah the Butchers that come on.
They don't last very long. Brother number 2 only lasts 24 seconds before he gets tossed. Savio Vega goes right back out. And then Shawn Michaels is then kind of starting to take over a little bit. He dumps both Yokozuna and Vader, which is a pretty crazy spot. Jim Cornette, who manages both guys, is losing his shit. And Vader isn't too happy either. He actually comes back in the ring and tosses a bunch of people.
Yep.
But he's not legal, so it doesn't count. But like,
which also felt like a change, because I'm like, oh right, they cared then. Like if you got eliminated by someone who wasn't legal, you weren't actually eliminated.
They changed the rules every Royal Rumble. Like the early Royal Rumbles, you can't eliminate yourself.
No, now you can. But they're like, no, you can't. No friendly fire. You have to be.
Right. The Vader thing was like, at first I was like, all right, finally something is happening in this match. But then like it just went a little too long. And it took too long for them to get everything back under control.
Yeah.
And I just...
And especially,
I was like,
especially because I'm
almost felt like the match stopped.
You have Bret Hart and Owen Hart out there. You have, not Bret Hart. You have Shawn Michaels and Owen Hart out there. Like, I want to see... No. It's still Vader. Okay. All right. Are we sure? It is. Okay. Well, Jim Cornette, please get him under control.
Yeah. And Hakushi, and then the Native American Tatanka. That's his full name, the Native American Tatanka. Yep. Not to be confused with the man they call Vader, the Mastodon. Aldo Montoya, who I didn't remember, and actually turns out he was Just Incredible. Yeah. Do you remember Just Incredible?
Yeah.
I like that name a lot.
It's a good name.
Wordplay for the win. It doesn't matter, though, because he only lasts 2 minutes. And then, so Diesel is clearly one of the big movers for this match. Kama, a.k.a. Charles Wright, a.k.a. the Godfather, a.k.a. Papa Shango.
That's what I remembered. I was like,
a.k.a. the Good Father, the man of 1,000 gimmicks. He was not the Mastodon, however.
And we had Rikishi, right? Rikishi comes out, but he's under the name Fatu, and this is his very brief make a difference gimmick where he's the youth pastor, basically reaching out to the urban youth.
What a mensch.
Wild times in WWE.
Isaac Yankem, who's Jerry Lawler's dentist, also Kane.
Yep.
Shows up. Yeah.
And then Vince gets all excited for Marty Jannetty, as if Marty Jannetty has a real chance to win this thing. The crowd does pop a little bit for Sean and Marty going at each other, which I thought was kind of cool. Is this after the kick through the window?
Oh, way
after, yeah. Because right, that was before the 92 one that we just watched.
Right.
Yeah. Austin is here as the ringmaster. Again, we noted this is his very first wrestling pay-per-view, right? A WWE pay-per-view. He's supposed to apparently be in the Final Four, but he gets tossed kind of by accident. But I mean, Rich and I both kind of went back and watched that on replay a couple times, and I actually can't tell that it was an accident. I don't know. Did you notice anything?
No, it didn't. It was one of those things where like I had seen that and I was like, I mean, it was one of the things where I was like, what exactly was he supposed to do to stop that? Like,
I don't know.
Was he supposed to do some kind of amazing gymnastic work? Because that's not really his thing.
Yeah, because he gets clotheslined over the top rope. And I don't know if he was just supposed to hold on to the top rope, but his hand fell off and he hit the floor, and you can even see him try to get back in the ring and stuff like that. And the refs stop him, and I don't know if he's like yelling at him, but I'm supposed to still be in there.
Like, and no, bud, you gotta go.
And like Vince didn't notice it at all. The announce team didn't notice it at all. And then suddenly they're like, "Hey, where's the ringmaster?"
Yeah, like they didn't call any attention to it, and then it was as though they were like, "Oh crap, well now we don't know what to do. We didn't write down who's in there. We're going to be surprised. I hope they all look different so we can tell."
Yeah, so we finally, let's see, we get to British Bulldog comes in at number 29, which is a primo spot. So we got Bulldog, we got Sean, Diesel, Kama, and Yankem are left, and Duke the Dumpster, Sean, Rich's second favorite wrestler, comes in at number 30. So he's going to win it all. He's got it.
I'm just going to start telling people Shawn Michaels is your favorite wrestler.
Oh, no. Okay, I take it back.
If you keep doing this.
So Sean and Davey go out on the floor. Sean gets Pearl Harbored by Owen Hart. Takes 5 refs to pull him off. It's chaos. It's great. And then the Dumpster and Isaac Yankem both go out. So that's a shocker. The Dentist and the Garbage Man are not going to win the Royal Rumble. So your final 4 are Davey, Sean, Kama, and Diesel. So let's see. So Sean puts out Davey. Sean almost gets tossed, but he does his skin the cat thing that he does every time.
Every time. Every time.
Not a Royal Rumble if Shawn Michaels doesn't skin the cat.
Diesel puts Kama out, and then Sean just super kicks Diesel over the top for the win and a big pop. He celebrates by pulling his pants down to expose his butt crack. I don't.
That's how I celebrate.
I don't know what's with this guy. Like I swear to God, he's an exhibitionist.
Yeah, it was one of those things where I was like, why? We haven't, what's happening?
The fans demand it in Sean's mind.
In Sean's mind, he's like, that's what he hears is the fans just yelling, "Take off your pants." And he's like, okay.
Is this gimmick supposed to be male stripper? Like,
I mean, he always kind of looked like a male stripper.
Yeah.
I feel like Johnny Gargano has told stories of being like, I was dressed up as Shawn Michaels and I just looked like a tiny child dressed up like a stripper.
He's just a sexy boy, though. He's just a sexy boy. It's in his song. So I don't know. There's a lot of posing and music afterwards, like Hulk Hogan style. It just goes on forever.
Yeah, Sean is acting like this is the end of the night, and there's still another match.
Yeah. And it's like they have their little moment with Diesel where it's like, oh, but they're friends, but he eliminated him, but they're oh, run up real high and high five him. You have to jump so high because you're so small and Diesel is tall.
Yeah.
And even that, I'm like, let's move this along. There's another match to come.
There's a weird little, like, Vince talks us into a commercial for ticket sales.
Yeah.
But then they don't show the commercial. And so it feels really weird when we watch it.
Yeah, it kind of feels like you could have made the executive decision to cut that. Like, not every word needs to be preserved. But okay.
Well, just like the ads for the 900 number too, to call and talk to the wrestlers, and then on Peacock it has it like number no longer active. Like, I don't know.
I still call it.
I wish it was.
What if that'd be a great Stephen King story. You call a number off of an old Peacock thing, and then you get to talk to like dead wrestlers, like Sean, like Scott Hall answers the phone.
Yeah.
Like, man.
But other people try to call it and they can't get through.
Yeah.
Oh man. Writes itself.
Right. Oh, I got chills. I just got chills right now. So, yeah. So, Bret Hart versus The Undertaker for the WWF Championship. This is Masked Undertaker. Is Masked Undertaker the worst Undertaker? Or is American Badass the worst Undertaker?
American Badass.
Yeah. Okay.
So the mask is because of a botch from Mabel. Mabel broke both of his orbital bones.
Yeesh.
They're supposed to go for a clothesline. Mabel's supposed to clothesline Taker, but Mabel is super gassed apparently at this point and bounces off the rope and comes at Taker and mistimes it and catches Taker with a fist straight to the face instead of the flabby part of your arm for a clothesline, and crushes Undertaker's face.
Yeah, that's no bueno.
No.
Bret takes a long time to kiss the belt and hold it. He says this may be the last time he ever holds that belt. He gives the shades away to a young man with Down syndrome at ringside, and I cried a little bit. I'm like, oh, I wish I was that kid. I kind of stopped taking notes on this one too, because actually I really, Bret Hart is my all-time favorite, and I love
Bret Hart.
I'll just watch. I just kind of just sit in awe whenever he's on. I don't like write a lot of things down, but for me, this one has everything that I want from both of these guys. It has sort of classic era Undertaker. He can still move around, so he's doing his big guy moves, but he can also some dramatic stuff. Bret runs through all his 5 moves of doom and all the usual Bret Hart stuff. I really like the dramatic moment where he like rips the mask off.
They were and I didn't. I don't have it written down. I was looking to see if maybe I did. They weren't calling it a mask. They kept calling it some elaborate name that I was like, you can just say mask. You can just say mask. But it's Vince McMahon.
His facial apparatus.
Yeah, his facial apparatus. I was like, he doesn't have like headgear. He doesn't have braces. He's just wearing a mask.
I mean, Vince uses very fancy language. Yeah. Like during he says that Bob Holly in the Royal Rumble put out a superlative effort.
Nobody talks like that.
Nope.
No.
Well, that's the whole medical facility instead of hospital. That's that kind of stupid shit. So Undertaker gets the tombstone in the pin, but of course Diesel interferes, costing Bret the match by DQ, but of course saving the belt. He gives a big old middle finger from Diesel in the aisle. It's very edgy. I wonder if this is our first televised middle finger on a wrestling.
It might have been.
I'd say it may well have been.
The first middle finger to appear on WWF television was at SummerSlam 1991 when it was given by the Mountie. These guys work the crowd like crazy.
Yeah.
That crowd is in a frenzy, and they're both fan favorites. And again, they're both working like heels in this match because they're just throwing everything at each other. And this is a good main event. This is better than the Royal Rumble match.
Yeah.
So good call on putting this in the middle at the end instead of before.
For sure.
I actually, if anything, and it's not a fault of either of them, I would have liked it to be a little bit longer just because I was enjoying the two of them. And I was like, that Rumble was kind of bland, and now you're giving me like this really great match with two guys arguably at their peak. and you bring in shenanigans, which, you know, it's the name of the game. It's how it goes. But it was a really solid match. And it was, again, as I said, watching Undertaker in his prime and remembering like, oh yeah, this is the guy that used to just blow my mind as a kid. My dad's favorite spot of all time still is the Undertaker doing a rope walk.
Yeah.
Like,
same with mine. My dad's favorite thing is when he does that too.
It's a dad thing, I guess. Dads are like,
Yeah.
this, I understand.
They shouldn't call it old school. They should call it the dad move.
Yeah.
Undertaker's going for the dad move.
That style. Yeah. So Undertaker wants Gorilla to make a match. Gorilla Monsoon is of course the what the booker, I guess. I don't know what you call him here.
Yeah, I don't know if he was like, if they were
taking over
like
Jack Tunney.
Yeah,
he was the commissioner at that point, or what they were calling him.
So he sets a steel cage for Diesel versus the Undertaker at the next In Your House show, which I went and looked and tried to find, but I couldn't find on the Peacock. I need to dig around a little bit more because I want to watch that.
At the end of each episode, we like to remember those participants in the show that we watched that are no longer with us. That list includes Scott Hall, Razor Ramon, Howard Finkel, Mr. Perfect Kurt Hennig, Referee Tim White, King Mabel, Yokozuna, The Man They Call Vader, British Bulldog Davey Boy Smith, Paul Bearer, and Gorilla Monsoon. Dr. Jess, it's been a great pleasure to have you on the show.
It's been wonderful. And yes, absolutely, I would love to come and do some We Were There, because I've gotten to see some really cool stuff, and appreciate you letting me come on and talk about my my work. So I am Wrestle Academic on Twitter, short and simple, at Wrestle Academic. And feel free to follow me for lots of retweeting and lots of thoughts and feelings about professional wrestling, because that's what I do.
All right. And as always, all the WrestleManias is at WrestleMania Pod on Twitter, all the WrestleManias at gmail.com if you want to email us. We're all the WrestleManias on Facebook. You can come find us on there. We have a lot of fun on the roundtable. And from there on out, I am your co-host, Rich Sigwald, and I thank everybody for listening. Have a good one.